While megalomaniacs or senile old warmongers can certainly make things worse, the underlying logic of the system in which they operate is the determining factor in how the crises they lead us through are handled. Take COVID, for example.
I know that we will achieve victory and quickly return to the path of exceptional health, safety, and prosperity for all of our citizens. We have to get back to work. Our people want to work. They want to go back. They have to go back.
Because the United States follows a capitalist economic philosophy, the key consideration during the pandemic was keeping the gears of the market turning, regardless of the human toll. The prime directive of capitalism is the accumulation of capital, and if that means we have to sacrifice low-paid workers on the altar of profit, so be it. There was no meaningful difference between Trump and Biden on this issue, despite the two leaders being characterized as polar opposites by the media class. If you look beneath the aesthetic differences between the two major parties, if you ignore the bombastic rhetoric and empty posturing on social issues and look strictly at the economic base of the system we live under, it's clear that every single great man one could point to is beholden to the same interests, and is therefore more of a byproduct of the system than a leader that changes it. Okay, so if it's not the leaders, then what makes the difference between empires that endure and empires that fall? Every nation and empire in history has faced challenges. Nothing exists in a vacuum. So what sets apart an empire that meets these challenges and one that's on the way out? In a nutshell, resilience. The ability of the system to react to, adapt to, and overcome the challenges they're presented with. Rebuilding key infrastructure after a natural disaster. Reassessing the system after an economic crisis to make sure it doesn't happen again. Taking swift action to protect people from a major disease outbreak. You can probably see where I'm going with all this. Take infrastructure. Flint, Michigan still has undrinkable water, despite the government finally promising to replace the water lines. Much of New Orleans is still destroyed or underwater 18 years after Hurricane Katrina. We have trains going off the rails at a rate of 4.8 derailments per day, many of those trains carrying toxic chemicals, as we saw firsthand when we went to East Palestine, Ohio earlier this year. The United States is notorious for letting its infrastructure fail and never repairing it. When it comes to economic disasters, things aren't any better. In the wake of the 07-08 financial crash and the recession that followed, nearly 10 million Americans lost their homes. Those homes were snatched up by institutional investors like BlackRock, and most of them are still held hostage on the rental market today. Did the government do anything about the conditions that led up to this crisis? Not really. They gave a couple people a slap on the wrist, but the vast majority of the criminal executives that profited from the real estate bubble and swindled the American people got off scot-free. And now, experts are saying it kinda looks like there's another bubble brewing. Most Americans are worse off now than they were in 2007. They haven't recovered. And if there is another crash, things will get even worse for even more people. Then, of course, there's COVID. Was there an answer to curbing the death toll of the pandemic? Yes. Did American leadership know what it was? Yes. Did they follow the science and prevent those deaths? No, they did not. In fact, they did the opposite, waxing poetic about the importance of the market and how valued our frontline workers are. And then they moved on. Over 1 million people died so the line wouldn't go down for a bit. Yet another failure of the American empire.